In this video, we will be tasting and talking about batch 82 of the Ecocha Tea Club, a Shan High Mountain Oolong Tea, Summer 2022 harvest. Today we are tasting batch 82 of the Ecocha Tea Club, a Shan High Mountain Oolong Tea from Summer 2022 harvest. And to begin with, we'd like to just kind of recap our intent and our goal in terms of sourcing batches of tea to share with the Ecocha Tea Club. One of the main tenets is to find rare or singular batches of tea that you just won't find anywhere else. Batches of tea that were made in a specific way based on various growing conditions, harvest conditions, processing methods, cultivars, etc. That's one of our ways that we go about finding teas to share with the tea club. Another is to just share delicious tea. When we find a batch of tea that we're inspired to share because we like it so much, that's a reason in itself. A third reason is to share teas that are exemplary specialty Taiwan teas. So teas that have become renowned, have a name for themselves and are known around the world. This is where Shan High Mountain Oolong Tea comes into play. Shan is the most prestigious name in High Mountain tea in terms of locations or regions in Taiwan where High Mountain tea is produced. It's the highest elevation tea growing region on Taiwan. So it's in a very remote and high elevation region. The climate is different from pretty much anywhere else on Taiwan. There is another area further north called Shan, and we shared a batch of tea early this year from that region for the first time. That has a similar climate. It's a little bit more like an alpine climate that we are familiar with from growing up in North America. The climate is drier, it's definitely cooler, and has most relevantly or significantly in terms of producing high quality tea, the greatest diurnal temperature variations, meaning that the daytime temperatures and nighttime temperatures vary the most at that elevation in that particular area of Taiwan. We chose the lightest oxidation day of harvest because it was most representative of Shan High Mountain Oolong, which is very fragrant, usually floral, sometimes fruity, herbal, just a lot of nose, and combined with significant substance. And at this elevation, that works best, but basically it works best, better than any other area or elevation in Taiwan. I brewed 9 grams of tea leaves in a 150 milliliter tea judging cup for 1 minute 10 seconds on the first brew, and then 1 minute on the second and third brew, and 1 minute 30 seconds on the fourth brew. Before we get into tasting, let's check out the visuals. The dried leaves are uniform in color. There's some larger nuggets in here and some smaller ones. This is malcha, meaning that it has been ungroomed, no stem removal involved, no removing of yellow leaf material as they would do in preparation for competition. And with the brewed teas, we can see quite obviously, there's one where all the leaves fell off, but it's a good example of how summer growth, the stems are longer, but they're also thinner and more supple. Whereas winter growth, if there's substantial stem material in a winter batch, in contrast, it can be a negative thing, a con. We're not really worried about stems in summer growth because the leaves grow so much faster and remain supple. So the stem material still brews a really nice flavor. Basically, it has a lot of juice in it still. It hasn't become too fibrous. And because it's still tender and supple, it's easier to process. One of the biggest factors in making an oolong tea is to slowly and steadily remove all the moisture content from the leaf so that the leaf will oxidize more uniformly. And that's more easily done when there is basically just young, tender leaves as opposed to older, more fibrous leaf material. So significant stem material, but for summer crops, that is totally normal and possibly, well, it can brew a really nice flavored tea, which we feel this one is. See, this is already room temperature. I still get very subtle, faint hints of perfumey floral, gentle, subtle floral notes, a little bit sweet, and maybe savory herb on the aromatic profile. It was much more pronounced when I was brewing the tea, or shortly after I brewed the tea. The leaves were still in the cup, and when it cooled down enough for me to stick my nose in the cup, it was very full on, and we encourage you to experience the aroma that is evaporating off of the leaves. Be careful not to burn your nose when doing so, but that when the leaves are cool enough and they're not completely volatile, but they're still effervescing, so to speak, after just being brewed, that's one of the most, well, enjoyable and prominent qualities in a good high mountain oolong tea. Talking too much, I'm thirsty now. So first brew, let's see, the coloration is quite uniform from where I'm sitting, at least. A nice limpid golden, a very nice soft yellowish green with viscosity to the visual appearance. Brew one. Soothing, smooth, buttery. Really nice, soft water, smooth mouthfeel. Very balanced flavor. I can definitely experience aromatic notes in the nose, but it's all kind of integrated rather than just like a very specific fresh vegetal or fresh floral note. Significantly more substantial on the second brew. These leaves in this type of cup, I didn't have the cup preheated. It takes a while for them to open up. So in my experience, it's usually the second and third brews that are the most substantial. Really nice balance to this brew. Very fresh still, but just kind of, I don't know, composed in its composition, in its constitution. Noticing a significant difference between the second and third. Both brewed for 1 minute. What am I tasting here? Yeah, I think it's just a tad lighter, but it becomes more complex in a way. I think this is the highest concentration between first, second, and third, which gives a really nice thick mouthfeel, very integrated composition. But now, while it's still substantial in flavor, it just brewed a little bit more lightly on the third brew, and I'm getting more of a pop in my, actually all over, in my mouth and in my nose. Really tender herbal, soft herbal and floral notes is what I'm getting, with a touch of sweetness. Very refreshing, but also soft. Fourth brew is brewed for 1 minute 30 seconds, and it kind of is more similar to the second brew. Second brew rocks. lighter and more complex. More distinct notes, I should say, in the third brew. Yeah, it's not fading, but it's changing. It's getting a little bit thinner in terms of the composition of it. It's still refreshing and pleasing. Summer tea, basically one of the most fundamental factors is because the leaves grow quickly and there's usually a good amount of water content in the leaves from significant rainfall. They are a little bit less full flavored in their composition than spring and winter. But everything is changing a lot in recent years. We had an unusually cool spring all the way up through May, which resulted in the spring crop being on the trees for longer and sort of turning out a little bit like a winter crop as a result. Because of the cool temperatures, those growing conditions produce a more substantial flavor, but whereas classically spring is very floral and fresh, it was a little mellower and deeper and more substantial this year, especially most significantly noticeable in our high mountain teas, Li Shan, Shan Shi, and even Ali Shan. The summer crops have been lighter and fresher, and in some ways embodying a spring tea flavor. So there we have it, summer 2022 Li Shan High Mountain Oolong tea. We're sharing this because we want people to experience why Li Shan has its famous reputation that it does, and to represent more prominently renowned names of specialty teas from Taiwan. So there we have it, Li Shan High Mountain Oolong Tea 2022 summer. Check it out and we'll see you next month.